I'm going to be discussing today why I think the donuts as we know them might be going extinct. And I'm going to use my area and some other areas as kind of a case study for why I see this trend. This is the very first episode of what I'm considering a podcast. I will go into that a little bit more later in the podcast for those of you who want to listen to this through its entirety. The It's a new format I'm rolling out that again I'll explain a little bit later. But I wanted to jump right into the content this week to talk about why I think amazing donuts are going extinct or going away. And what prompted this to come in my head was recently we took a trip to the West Coast to Anaheim and San Diego, California. And in that trip, we ate a lot of really great donuts. And it was kind of a goal of mine going out there to make a video kind of talking about, I don't want to say a specific type, but I guess there's kind of a legend out in that direction. And I saw a documentary about this on Hulu about these Cambodian owned and run donut shops, which are very prevalent in the West Coast. The challenge that I actually had was that donut shops over there were very common. So when planning out this video that I had in my head of, tasting some of these Cambodian run donut shops, I wanted to kind of hit one or two, and I kind of got a good concept, and it's a video I have to work on as an edited thing here on YouTube. But they're kind of, I don't want to say a dime a dozen, but they're, I think from our hotel to this other section in Anaheim, we stayed very close to Disneyland. There were within like a 5 mile or a 5 block radius, like 12 places. So it was kind of difficult for me to hone in on exactly what I wanted to feature for this video. In stark contrast, in my area here, we don't have any specialized donut shops. And I'm going to get into kind of what the specifics in my area here are, just to give you kind of a lay of the land so you understand what I'm up against here when I'm looking for, good donuts. I mean, I'm a heavyset guy. I love my donuts. I love my sweets. I have to slow down a little bit, and we've talked about that before in the past. But in my area, it's kind of unique. We have places that make very particular types of donuts, but we don't have donut shops, which is very odd. And I think back to when I was in college. I went to college local to where I am now. I think I went to college 15 minutes away from where I currently live. Right down the road from my college, I went to Siena College. It's not a secret; everybody knows. It's a detail anybody can look up if they're looking for me. Right down the road, there was a Dunkin' Donuts, and I spent a lot of time in this Dunkin' Donuts between graduate school and college. But what was noteworthy about this Dunkin' Donuts was they were one of the last places in New York State that baked donuts fresh daily, as opposed to the current model of Dunkin' Donuts, where they're made at a central facility and then kind of moved into, all the individual Dunkin' Donuts. Where I live right now, it's really interesting. 2 miles from my house, there's actually like a Dunkin' Donuts on one side of the street and a Dunkin' Donuts on the other side of the street. It's like one of those things where it just, I guess, for access and ease of making turns into the Dunkin' Donuts, they actually have ones that are very close. And from what I understand, all of these Dunkin' Donuts locations are actually owned by the same people or business, whatever it is. So this particular Dunkin' Donuts in Latham was owned by an older gentleman who was a holdout. He said, I know the recipes, and I'm going to go right into, exactly. I'm going to make these donuts every day because people really enjoy that homemade touch. And there really is something to that. The reason why I know this is because a professor that I had in college, Dr. Diamond, he's since passed away. He was old at the time, but I think he had some medical issues and passed away while I was in graduate school. But one day he brought us in donuts. I don't remember exactly the context because I had him in for a few classes, not only physics, but he brought in donuts from a place called Bella Napoli, which is kind of catty corner to where that Dunkin' Donuts location is. And he said, I just found out that the Dunkin' Donuts, where I usually get my homemade donuts, are not he's no longer allowed to make the donuts fresh daily. He has to get it from, the distributor, who I think they're located somewhere in Western Massachusetts, and they kind of ship them around, at least for this particular vicinity. So it was interesting for him to say that, but in that conversation, he said to us, it's not a bad thing because Bellinopoli, which is right across the street, is a family-owned business, and they make very good donuts for the area, and it's a place where you can sit down and have a cup of coffee. So it's not like it's a huge loss because literally across the street, you can get a similar experience. And I will say, I'm going to get back to Bellinopoli toward the kind of the end. It's in the middle of my notes here, but Bellinopoli does make good donuts, and I would argue, as far as the most variety, their donuts are probably the best in my particular vicinity. Um, but that's to say, what is my area known for as far as donuts? And I think hands down, what anybody will tell you is apple cider donuts. What I've found is that outside of the Northeast, apple cider donuts are something that, if people are familiar with it, they're only familiar with it because they've either been to an apple orchard or pumpkin picking where they specialize in these donuts. So apple cider donuts are a very specific type of cake donut that sometimes the actual cake has spice in it, but they're fried and they're promptly rolled in a cinnamon sugar. Apple cider donuts are amazing. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with apple cider donuts. The problem when it comes to apple cider donuts and the experience of getting apple cider donuts in this area is that if you find an apple orchard that's open in the winter, right now there are very few, but you could find them. If you do find one of these places, they only make apple cider donuts. You can get them with sugar or without sugar. There's a place in Rensselaer County called Windy Hill Orchard where you could actually get like apple cider donut milkshakes and things like that. But you can't get like a yeast donut or a Boston cream or a cruller or anything like that. And it's kind of, I don't want to say upsetting, but it's really disappointing because it when I went to the West Coast, and this isn't like a East Coast versus West Coast. I'm not trying to get into that. I think the mid 90s taught us that we're not trying to pit ourselves against each other, because my area has a lot of strengths. But it was really cool to walk into one of the donut shops I went to was a place called Winchell's, which I think is a chain in that area, but that you can tell they're independently owned. And there's donuts up and down the cases. And it was just a crazy experience because for me, I wouldn't know what to pick if I had to choose like one or two. That's why I kind of picked a variety, and I compared two stores against each other. But what's crazy about that is, in this area here, we have these places that specialize in these cider donuts, and on the West Coast, they don't make those cider donuts. They make cake donuts that have kind of sugary coatings, but they're different. It's not the same. So the cider donuts are kind of a very specific thing that we have here in the area. To that end, one of the more popular donut shops in my area, Albany, you know, there's two locations. One is currently not open. I don't know what the deal is there, but I think it might be due to the building or something. Is a place called Cider Belly Donuts, which I've actually done a live review here on the channel, I think back in November, which I can leave in the show notes later on for you to check out if you'd like to see that. This is a place that specializes in making only cider donuts in a bunch of different varieties. So they had one like coated in cereal. They had other ones that are coated like pumpkin spice, maple, the types of things that you would find in your traditional donut shop, but applied strictly to cider donuts. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, I think they make a very good product there. I have no problem with Cider Belly. I thought what I got was very good. I think I got some kind of like cappuccino thing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember being impressed by that at a time where I wasn't supposed to be eating quite as much sugar as I did, which is kind of funny. And another interesting thing is, aside from these places that specialize in these cider donuts, and like I said, cider donuts are, if you've never had them before, it's a top tier experience. If you've had them before, it's a great experience. we got married at a place called Indian Ladder Farm, which is probably one of the more premier destination orchards in the area. When you go there in the fall, parking lots get full really quick. People actually come from the city just to go to this place. Their cider donuts are awesome. We actually got married in April at Indian Ladder Farms, and we had warm cider donuts as part of our dessert there. We didn't want to do the traditional wedding cake, so we had cupcakes, and it was at an orchard, so why not take advantage of that and have this, warm cider donuts, which is amazing. And actually, in the live chat right now, Keith saying, "I love getting cider donuts made to order at the fair in the fall. It's incredible." It's one of those things. I don't know how they're able to do it where they make them to order and they're always warm, but that's a great experience. With that said, it's not the same. And I don't want to hate on my area, because part of what I'm trying to do here is kind of, be an advocate for all the great things that we're doing in our area here. But this West Coast donut experience was pretty interesting. And if you're having trouble visualizing what I'm talking about as far as what a donut shop would be, um, and I'm going to say another thing. I live in upstate New York. I imagine that in New York City, there probably are donut shops. I don't explore New York City often, but I imagine it would be similar to what's going on in the West Coast, where you have these donut shops that have like dozens. I mean, if you did a dozen donuts, you could probably order 3 dozen of the donuts in Anaheim where I ordered, and still have things that you haven't picked, which to me is impressive, because that's 36 or more varieties of doughs that you have to make. And what was I saying? This is the thing about going and doing unscripted, and this is kind of a podcast format where it's supposed to be a little bit more relaxed on purpose, because I want to try to offer some different types of things. But as far as the donut experience, if you can't visualize what it is, the best example that I could give about the West Coast donuts, as far as from a person who really never frequented donut shops aside from like a Dunkin' Donuts, in the movie Boogie Nights, there's a famous scene where somebody goes in and orders some donuts, and there's a robbery, and then there's some action that happens that is unfortunate, and it helps the plot progression of the movie. But that is the West Coast. I mean, I'm teetering on the edge of saying I ate the donuts from Boogie Nights or something. Uh, as far as the video title, I don't know if there's interest in the movie Boogie Nights at this point. That's just me kind of spitballing my the things that I have loved over the years that kind of relate to the things that I'm making on YouTube right now. I'm probably not going to refer to Boogie Nights in the title of the video, because I'm kind of, I want it to sweep kind of broadly, so that anybody who loves donuts is going to love this video. When I'm looking for donuts in the area, I have very limited options. I could either get cider donuts. I'm sure if I were to Google right now an orchard that were open at this time of day, probably not. But whenever you're listening to this, if you're listening to this during the day, you could probably Google, and you could probably drive over and get some fairly fresh cider donuts. The other options that we have are local bakeries. There aren't many of those either. As somebody in the live stream, Keith here mentioned, there's a place called Skylar Bakery in Waterville that makes excellent donuts. I love their donuts. I wish I lived closer to them, but they don't specialize in donuts. That they're not a donut shop. They're a bakery that also sells donuts. That's to say they're very good. What I love about Skylar Bakery is that their donuts are irregular. So it's almost like eating beignets, where you could tell that they were cut by hand and not by some motorized thing where each one is perfect. And there's some charm in that to me. I love the idea of somebody hand making whatever you're trying to eat. To me, that's a pretty cool thing. But Skylar Bakery is very good. The other place that we have, which I mentioned earlier, is a place called Bella Napoli. They have 2 locations in the area. One is in Latham, which is catty corner to that Dunkin' Donuts, what I mentioned earlier in the stream here. And also Um, they have one in Troy. I forget the street, but it's there, and they make excellent donuts. As far as the donuts that they also offer cider donuts. They have a place. They have I used to joke with my coworker who also worked at Bellinopoli. They have hard cider donuts and they have what they call softy cider donuts. The hard cider, I used to say, well, was hard cider made with hard cider, and it was a stupid joke, but it was one of those things where it's like, why even bother having two varieties? I guess people like different things, and there's no problem with that. I'm not gonna tell anybody that what they like is wrong. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to create a discussion and to create a space where we can talk about food and talk about our opinions. And if we disagree, we disagree. If we agree, we agree. But at least we're talking about cool stuff and delicious stuff. But they have cider donuts at Bellinopoli. They also have, your glaze. They have, your powdered. What do they call them? Powdered jelly, and then they have like powdered lemon, and they have, I would say, close to a dozen varieties, if not a dozen. But Bellinopoli is an Italian bakery. And again, Keith's blowing up the live chat here. And what I like about recording this podcast live is that I can interact with some of the comments in real time, which is really cool. And also, my voice goes out in real time, so that's kind of another cool thing. What he's saying at Skylar Bakery, he likes the Boston cream, which I do too, because it's like an irregular smear of the chocolate frosting on top, which is pretty cool. But at Bellinopoli, one of Keith's favorite is the cinnamon twist. I like the twist at Bellinopoli too. There's something about the twist, the shape of it, that it's almost like the inside, I don't want to say is undercooked, but it's cooked to a lesser degree where it's a little bit chewier, and it kind of takes a little more chewy. Like, that's why they call it chewy, right? It takes you a couple more chews and maybe an extra sip of liquid to get those down. But it's not Bellinopoli is not a donut shop. They are an Italian American bakery that happens to also sell donuts. Now, the fact that their donuts are probably the best in the area is, I think, more a testament to the fact that there aren't many places in the area. They're outstanding. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to tell you that Bellinopoli's donuts are bad. In fact, if we were to talk about, does Bellinopoli make good Italian pastries or Italian American pastries or donuts? I'll tell you all day, Bellinopoli excels in donuts over their Italian pastries. Their cannolis, here's a negative. If they didn't fill them however much time ahead, they'd be probably 8 or 9 out of 10 cannoli, but they're sitting in that case filled. Here's my hack, and I've done a YouTube short on this before. If you go to a place where they pre-fill the cannolis, this is sidebar, we're not talking about donuts this particular second. If you go to a place where they pre-fill cannolis, order the chocolate covered cannoli, because there the shell is dipped in chocolate before they fill it. So the filling will be crunchy. Plus, you also get a little extra chocolate. Who can complain about that? But my criticism is not that Bellinopoli makes bad donuts, because that's not true. They make excellent donuts, which is why my college physics professor got us donuts from there that one day. He loves that. He loved that place. But it's not a donut shop. That's my point, is in this particular area, and also corroborated with some people, via social media, and also my community tab here have also reported that in their areas they don't have access to donut shops, like I'm talking about. Just today, I actually got a comment from Jessica Elsener, who lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, and she said that, I'll read you her comment. I feel as though we used to have some independent donut places. We have a regional chain called Lamar's. She gave me the website, and a slightly larger chain called Hertz Donuts. And of course, Dunkin' Donuts is here too. We have several local grocery stores that pride themselves in their donuts, but they aren't great. And that brings me to kind of my next point. The other place that you can go for donuts in this area here is the grocery store. Now, I've learned that Hannaford, so In this area, there's 2 major grocery stores and then a couple of other grocery stores. Hannaford and Price Chopper are kind of the 2 majors. Then we have Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's doesn't have donuts typically. If they do have donuts, they were made at some central facility, have been in a box for a while. They're not fresh daily donuts. Or Whole Foods. Whole Foods does get in daily donuts. I haven't been to Whole Foods in a while to have their donuts, but I've enjoyed them in the past. As far as variety, they might have 3 or 4 at a particular time. Back when I've previously gone to Whole Foods, for all I know, we they could Whole Foods could be a donut shop now for all we know because I haven't been there in quite a while. But between Price Chopper and Hannaford, I don't like Hannaford's donuts because I feel like they're never actually fresh. I feel like you're getting them toward the tail end of their freshness cycle. Keith here is saying you can get away with the frosted donuts if they're super fresh. I don't know. I've never gotten donuts at Hannaford that taste like they're actually fresh. Or Price Chopper. And Keith says he doesn't like Price Chopper's donuts at all. I actually don't mind Price Chopper's donuts. And here's kind of my take on the supermarket Price Chopper donut in the area. In Latham, right down the road from the Bellinopoly, right down the road from the the Dunkin' Donuts, right there down the road from my college, there's a location that is called Market Bistro, where it's like their flagship store. They have a donut shop. Well, you can see them making donuts in the back. They have like a couple of varieties of donuts where they're like a half pound donuts. They're what they call the premium experience. I've gotten one of those. It's a lot. It's it's been a while since I've actually gone in there and gotten one of those, but it's one of those things you can't eat. You could eat one of those and that's it. Whereas like Dunkin' Donuts, I could easily kill a 6-pack. That's that. But for for those donuts, those Price Chopper donuts are excellent at that particular location. At other locations, it's kind of hit or miss. For example, yesterday I woke up and I said, I want a donut. I know it's not within my plan of what I should be eating right now, but I'm thinking about these damn donuts for this video I'm doing tomorrow. I'm thinking about these damn donuts for the edit that I'm doing here. And I gotta quench this urge. I need a donut. So close to where I work, there's another what they call Market 32, which is another thing. Price Chopper rebranded like I don't want to say half-ass, but it was kind of a not full rebrand because they're still called Price Chopper and they're also called Market 32, and then they have some locations called Market Bistro. So I don't really understand their current branding, but this Market 32 location near work has fresh donuts. And I know they're fresh but by lunchtime there's nothing left in the case. And it's also you could tell people there's high traffic. You have to get your own. So yesterday I got a Boston cream and I made a YouTube short about it. You can go and check that out if you're interested, or it's on other social media as well. If you follow me, derryX on Instagram or TikTok. TikTok is derryX Dines. But I got this donut and this was interesting because I didn't expect for okay. So walking into Market 32 and picking up this donut, nothing seemed out of the ordinary to me. It just seemed like a Boston cream donut. The ones next to them, there seemed to be some liquid underneath it where it looked like they were just overfilled. So I picked up the one that I bought. I inspected it. It was perfectly I don't want to say plump, but it was, it appeared nice. The Boston cream hadn't fallen through the bottom. So and it felt like there was a decent amount of weight in there. So I bought it. 99 cents. No problem with that either. That's a good price. So I'm in the car, I'm eating this thing. I bite into it and I was shocked. And if you saw the video, you can kind of see a little bit of my what do you what is this thing? What do you call it? Taken aback is what they say as far as that. It was yellow, and when I say yellow, how yellow was it? Anyway, it was yellow. I mean, you expect some degree of color when you're eating a donut, but the degree of yellow that this donut was, it was beyond what I would expect to be a donut. Clearly they had extra yolk that was in there, and it reminded me kind of Polish paxi, which they also do very well, but it's a little late for that. I feel like that was a few weeks ago where they sell, paxi, where they're kind of like cream filled. One of them was like a cookie dough, one of them like Oreo cream, and they're donuts, but they're a little bit eggier. That's what this was, and it was weird to have a Boston cream donut in that kind of format with the eggier donut. But you could see, like, it's back to my point about how the donut shop experience just doesn't exist. You can't even get consistent donuts from the supermarket. And Keith kind of chimed back in here with, as far as Hannaford's right at 8 a.m. for the donuts. I mean, most working people don't have the ability to pop into a place, right at 8 a.m. To hit the delivery or whatever it is. That said, though, a lot of places here get away with opening after people normally work, which I don't understand that either. Our bakeries, some of them, I think Bellinopoli starts at 6 or 7, which is good because that allows people to get in there before they go to work and bring stuff in for the office and all that stuff. But there are places that open 8:30 and close at like 3. I don't get that. Like I'm not going to go someplace to an not inner city, but like where I have to parallel park, where parallel parking is scarce, um, just to catch a donut shop that at 2:30, or I can't get out of work at 2:30 or during my lunch, to buy donuts or to buy anything that at a place that they might be sold out. It's kind of a crapshoot as it is. So that's one of those things as well. I don't know what the deal is with that, but a lot of bakeries are just not accessible, and that's part of the problem that I have. Whereas in the West Coast, they're 24 hours. The one place that we went to, so we were on East Coast time the day that I filmed this video, and you'll see when you see this footage. I'm really excited about this one. But when you see the footage, the first place that I filmed, it was still dark. The sun was just coming up. The place didn't have a backlit sign, and it was just it was still dark. But by the time I got to the second place, it was the sun was up and doing my thing there, filming out there. But it was just it was funny. They're open 24 hours, and at the time that place was busy. The staff, the clientele was immigrant workers, probably Mexican. They were speaking Spanish to each other. The staff knew how to speak Spanish, and I think at the second place I went, they were also Hispanic as well. So it was kind of an interesting dynamic as well. You could tell that you know it's not like they were surprised people were coming in at 6:30 in the morning for donuts. That they're they're open 24 hours for a particular purpose. Here we don't have anything like that. If right now when I'm recording this, it's 8:30 p.m. I'm sure if I went to my local Price Chopper, Market 32, Market Bistro, whatever you want to call it, they probably have donuts, but they'd be left over from this morning. And maybe they have one or two left. It's not like they're churning them out all day. There is one more option of but before I get to that, I have to address Keith's thing here. The old Dunkin' Donuts commercial, "Time to make the donuts." So I think that guy was from Brooklyn, and they used to feature those commercials all the time when I was a kid. I remember the guy, "Time to make the donuts," and sometimes he'd run into himself. There was a lot of really weird Dunkin' Donuts commercials. They were aggressively branding back in the '80s. That was kind of the heyday for Dunkin' Donuts as far as taking over the world for daily breakfast pastry. He looked like Mario. He looked like Mario. There is one other type of donut that is in my area, and it is not only in my area. Right before the thing that we dealt with from 2020 to 2021, in 2019, there was a place called Duck Donuts that opened in Latham. Ironically, very close to Market Bistro, where I just told you about those half-pound donuts, Bella Napoli, the Dunkin' Donuts that the guy was the last holdout, and my college. So there's a lot in this vicinity, and there's one more place. There's one more donut story I have about the Latham. What is it about Latham and donuts? Just discovered that as I was saying this. Duck Donuts opened in 2019 here in the capital region. We tried it. I now have on my channel 3 videos featuring Duck Donuts and trying different things at Duck Donuts. The first video, well, forget about my videos. Let's talk about what Duck Donuts is. I'm over here just trying to self-promote the whole time. You guys want to hear content. I'm trying to serve you old stuff. No, my goal here is to create a new discussion, and we'll pull in some old points here and there wherever we have to. I get told I live in the past too much, Dom. Duck Donuts is a place where you can get a variety of donuts. And when I say variety, it is one donut. They make one type of donut, and you can get a whole bunch of toppings on them. So you can get like a glazed, but it's the same cake donut, and it's really interesting. Duck Donuts is also pretty prevalent in the South, and I think they originated in Duck, North Carolina. We've spent a lot of time at the Outer Banks, excuse me, and there actually is a place in the Outer Banks called Duck, North Carolina, which is where Duck Donuts started, which is interesting. We did go to that Duck Donuts. That is video number 2 in the series that I brought up before. The line, it took us 20 minutes to order, 40 minutes to get our stuff. What I said in my most recent video talking about these guys, if you go to North Carolina Outer Banks and you want donuts, you can go to Duck Donuts, just don't go to the one in Duck. Spending an hour out of your day when you could be on the beach or doing any of the other activities on the Outer Banks, it's a waste of time for the donuts that they are. They are cake donuts with stuff on top. You can get them frosted, you can get them glazed, you can get peanut butter and jelly, you can get maple bacon, you can get any variety you want. You can make your own. They have ways that you can combine toppings and things like that. I think when we went to that one in Duck, we got peach cobbler. So they make unique things and they put really, really good stuff. They're tasty donuts. It is not the donut experience I'm talking about. The donut shop as we know it is kind of going away. We're seeing it less and less. One of my friends on Twitter, Dan Eastman, who lives in Pennsylvania, they don't have any donut shops around them either. He was speculating that it might have something to do with, the health movement. And I thought about that too. But aren't people in California trying to be healthier than people here on the East Coast? So can that really explain it? And I think the answer to that is no. I don't think that the health movement is what actually is causing it. I think it's just demand. I think my area is notorious here for chasing trends. Back around like 2010, cupcakes were a thing. Cupcake shops popped up all over the place. Bakeries started making cupcakes, and that became the thing. A few years ago, niche donuts became a thing, and Duck Donuts opened. There's a couple places in Saratoga doing these things. There's Cider Belly Donuts, and I'm not saying that these places don't have longevity. I think Cider Belly's been open for at least 5 years now. These places make very good product, but they're chasing kind of Instagrammable foods. And that it is what it is. Even the cider donut experience at the orchards, this place, Windy Hill Orchard, they're chasing the Instagram by making, cider donut milkshakes and, cider donut waffles and things like that. Nothing wrong with it. It's a way to innovate, but a donut shop where you can just walk into it and get 20, 30 different varieties of donuts, we don't have that. And that's kind of my point. And to that end, I would say, I do think that to some degree, amazing donuts are going extinct. whether or not they'll come back, these things happen to be cyclical. So at some point, I'm sure some artisan bagel, it's round, right? So it's the same thing. Some artisan donut maker is gonna, come up with some way to popularize it again so that people are talking about it. But my hope is that in speaking about donuts here tonight, we think about, hey, maybe if you have a local donut shop, go in there, throw a couple bucks down, have a donut. The other story about Latham that I kind of skipped over that I wanted to talk about, and I need a sip of water because I've been rambling and my throat is a little raspy. But in Latham, New York, very close to Duck Donuts, pretty close to Price Chopper, Market Bistro, Market 32, whatever you want to call it. Just a little bit farther down the road from Bellinopoli, which is catty corner to one of the last Dunkin' Donuts that was making their own donuts from scratch. We had a Krispy Kreme that opened up in the middle aughts. I think it was like 2004 or 2005. People in this area went insane over this Krispy Kreme donut. It was as if I can't even. So I lived on the road where they opened up. It was like the interchange between Route 2 and Route 7 in Latham. Right now, there's a Starbucks and an Applebee's where that was. When they opened, they needed police coverage on the road to direct traffic so that people weren't making lefts across like major traffic, throttle things, because it was such a busy intersection and people were just going absolutely nuts over these Krispy Kreme donuts. I have no problem with. I like Krispy Kreme. I had them before in New York City. It's one of those rites of passage. You have to go to a Krispy Kreme in New York City. This is back in the late 90s. So I've had them before, but it's not one of those things. I'm not going to kill myself to get into a parking lot just to get Krispy Kreme donuts. It's just not, you know, I always joke that, when the light went on, which is when you get a free donut, that the traffic went crazy over there. I mean, that wasn't really a joke. That actually really happened. But it's funny. I within that like 3 mile stretch, we there are a lot of donut stories, and I'm sure if I thought about it even harder, there's probably other things that I could relate to donuts that happened, in that little vicinity in Latham. Um, just kind of a little food for thought there. Wrapping up the discussion on donuts, I want you to, if you're on YouTube where you're watching this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Make sure you like, if you make sure you hit like on the video itself. Subscribe if you like discussions like this or videos about food. If you want to continue to support the podcast and the channel, you can do super chats, which actually are like tips, super stickers, which are also like tips, or there's super thanks, which is literally like, throwing the channel a couple bucks. It keeps things going here and helps me with, keeping my gear, up to date and making quality stuff. I also have a merch shelf and store, which is linked down below as well. Um, what I'm doing here as far as this podcast, so I found out that YouTube is leaning heavily into podcasting, and what they're looking to do is incorporate podcasts into YouTube music. So I'm trying to take a little bit of advantage of that, but also use it as a way to explore different types of formats. It'll allow me to bring guests on and talk about particular topics, or just talk about topics like I am right now. And I'm happy to have you here. Um, if you're a YouTube Premium user, I don't know if not, I think you can listen to this as audio only by just closing your screen, which is exactly what I hope. I right now have 36 back live streams that you can listen to that I populated into the podcast, and that is also linked down below as well. So if you want to hear more, it probably isn't as focused as what I'm doing here right now, because today I actually prepared notes. And by focused, I mean controlled chaos is what I would call what I just did here as far as this video. But I'd love to have you. So if you If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, comment on the stuff. I'm going to try to do these live so that I can interact with the live chat, and that's great. I'm excited. I have a lot of good content on the way, and can't wait for you to see it, including next week, even more fried goodies. I have a very, very particular pastry that I want to talk about that is only available this time of year in theory. And that's all I'll say about it right now. If you're watching this on the replay, I'm going to leave on the screen a link to more podcast episodes, some more donut things that you can watch. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to the DerryX Dines podcast.